Welcome to the Edge of Light. My name is Michael Hemmett. Let's take 10 breaths. So you may notice that this is a different environment than I'm normally connecting with you guys. Um, but I wanted to talk about the relationship that I see between spirituality and connecting to the earth. And I know I talked about this briefly before, but I thought it might be a little bit more interesting and relevant to actually watch me go about some normal stuff that, maintenance related that, instead of having me just sit here and you look at my face and you see the garden that I'm very proud of and I spend a lot of time on. So a couple things that I wanted to point out. One is that I would almost never wear jewelry. I never really wear jewelry in the first place, but I would never wear a watch doing gardening, but I need to keep track of time. Because uh, you know, segmented episode. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that I'm not wearing my wedding ring, and the main reason for that, of course, is that we live in Hawaii, and lava rock is very sharp. It's very textured, and I'll be digging in dirt and moving rocks and stuff. I don't want to damage my ring. Um, but I also think it's kind of funny. Like I've had somebody say to me, like, "What do you mean you take your ring off? Like what?" And and I just thought, well, what um it's important to protect the ring. I do agree with what the ring symbolizes, and a lot of times, I do feel like the ring when I'm out and about, you know, in the world, it feels, like a bit of armor, you know. So I totally on board with all that. And I think that if a little piece of metal is holding your marriage together, you're in big trouble. So, for practical reasons, take the ring off. Now, first thing that we're going to do, um, so as the land is so loving and abundant, it provides for us, and we do the best we can to give back. So this is coffee grinds because I'm just as in love with coffee as the next guy. So coffee grinds, we're just gonna spread around. This is a grapefruit there, angel trumpet with some ginger, lots of pineapple. Just being respectful, I might talk about that later. This is longan, and that goes here, and that's about it. I don't try to be particularly, um, there's no need to be like super detailed or measured with it. Drink enough coffee, spread it around, and we'll go through a jar about this size, I don't know, maybe every 2 weeks. So, um, so that's the coffee. I want to do a little bit of maintenance on the lilies. So let's go over there. Okay, that was a interesting turn of events. So, but I feel like it's so relevant that let's just keep going with this theme. As I was walking out there to pick up the little keikis, and Hawaiian keiki means child, so like the little sprouts from the lily plant, I find out that my pigeon peas, two of them, fell over. We did have a storm last night, a minor storm, but on inspection I saw that there was some bug damage to the trunk, and that's what weakened it enough so that they would fall over. But but this is just exactly the whole point of why maintenance is so critical. And I see a direct parallel between maintenance of the self, the spiritual health and well-being, and your general sense of understanding and appreciation of maintenance. So, for example, you might even say, well, in the natural order of things, um, those pigeon pea trees are they're weaker and they will fall. Yes, but they were not existing of themselves. They were providing shade for some sun intolerant plants like cacao, and there's some ginger and some other leafy like ornamentals that they were providing an environment for. And not only is that environment not there anymore, but when the tree fell over, it actually hit a couple of them, and I think they're going to be okay. I hope they are. But yeah, it just goes to show, if I had waited longer, pigeon pea's not going to recover, but the bugs might spread, and the trees and the other plants that it was protecting are now more vulnerable. So and I guess you don't want to be too like aggressive about it in a sense, but at the same time, like I'm out doing yard work like all the time. Like, I mean, I was out there yesterday, the day before. These things just happen. They come up upon you, and this is another, I think, really important spiritual concept is vigilance. You know, just because it looks good right now doesn't mean that you take your eye off. And again, not to be like anxious about it, but to be mindful of the dynamic nature of things that in some sense the door is always guarded. And I think about this with relationships. Some people you just fully trust and they're awesome, and you can just be completely relaxed in their presence, and these are like the best people to have. I feel like my wife is like that. And some of my buddies, some of my really good like friends, and I have two brothers, my brothers too. Um, and then there are other people that, you know, based on their level of maturity and so forth, um, they're as good as they need to be while they're being monitored. And so there's that, that you, as long as people know they're being watched, they'll behave. Now, another part of that, which is to be responsible for yourself, is that you're watching yourself, because other people with whatever their stuff might be in terms of like trauma response, dependencies, all these things, power struggle. You have to monitor yourself in order to be mindful of when someone might be trying to lay a hook, like trying to engage you in defending yourself, or engage you in some kind of manipulation in some way. And a lot of that's unconscious, but it doesn't have to be on your part. Meaning, as long as you're vigilant about the quality of the interaction and what's really going on, you see a hook coming, someone's like try to criticize you, and you just no thanks, rather not, you know, as opposed to like how dare you, like all that. So yeah, but it is a bummer because that's going to be a lot of. I mean, I know you can tell like I'm sweating like crazy. Because of the termites, I needed to just postpone this production and get all of it out as much as I can. Um, all the healthy wood will be salvaged, meaning I'll cut it into segments and mulch it and put it back straight back on the land. Anything that looks damaged, I'm just going to take to the green waste facility here, where they'll grind it and cook it to kill what's ever in there. Um, but when you're pulling a tree, especially like a soft tree, like the pigeon pea is. It's the wood is very pliable. That's probably why it's susceptible to bugs. More so than like a, let's say, a guava, which is a very hard wood. I mean, all woods are susceptible, but some more than others, especially if they have a break in the skin. Um, but you know, you cut it into pieces, and you can see that the bugs are way down and down into the ground, into the root ball, and then you just try to get as much as you can. And I feel like that's, again, it goes back to like the vigilance and maintenance, um, because it would be foolish of me to think that I got all of it, you know. I mean, I hope I did. I hope I did a good job. I did my best. But the reasonable, vigilant self, you know, is going to go back and monitor it and check all the plants around it for any signs of bugs, because the last thing I want, of course, is for it to spread. And you know, this kind of insight, I feel like, I don't know if it's obvious to people or not, but these are the things that come up when I'm doing gardening. You know, another example, um, I have one tree that's next to a raspberry plant, and that raspberry plant has thorns. Now, those two plants are, you know, a couple feet away from each other, but on one of the branches of this tree, it's all damaged and scarred. And that's because when the wind blows, it comes down and touches the raspberry, and it grates on the thorns. And so, you know, I look at that and it's like, oh my God, that's like a, you know, certain kinds of relationships where people will make excuses for somebody or justify, oh, that person is thorny, but you know, they're over there and I'm over here and we're not that close, so it's okay. And I would say that's not really okay. You know, like, why do we tolerate people that are um, that might hurt us? You know, just because they're not right in our face. Honestly, I think just having unhealthy people, even in the periphery, if you can help it, is to put a boundary there. You know, to create a distance at which they cannot scratch you. You know, and in this example, it's so perfect. Um, I guess that's why, among other things, why I like gardening so much is that it helps to congeal a lot of ideas that I have about you know, relationships and how things go. So well, that was like a crazy detour of about an hour of me just sweating, working in the sun. I wanted to montage the whole thing, but my learning lesson here too, my camera overheated. And my wife just got home, so we're gonna check back in. All right, we're back. Hmm. Let's do another 10 breaths. Never a dull moment. Um, my wife liked to point out to me in between shots that it's always funny to have these thoughts of, oh, well, today will just be an easy day, make a video, do some light gardening. And then, of course, it never goes the way you planned. And in fact, um, on top of the other reasons why I felt like that was a really awesome example and segue into various insights, it even ties into a question or a request on something from a viewer, and it is just to speak about trusting the universe. So um, I think that the idea of trusting the universe, similar to the last topic that was asked, um, it sets up a dynamic of relationship between your individual self and the greater universe. And and I'm not saying that that's not true in a sense, but it's not the whole case. And so you just want to just that caveat of um, not being too rigid about your individual self being at the whims of more powerful being or entity intelligence that you're relying on all the time. And so I like to offer a different way of looking at that. So what I would suggest is that um, you only have to have a sense of trust if you are experiencing a division, a separateness. And that even would go with, when someone even say like, I need to trust myself, like maybe someone who has an alcohol problem, they say like, I don't trust myself to be around alcohol. And that's a very responsible thing to say, and to incorporate into how you behave. If that's true, then act accordingly. But embedded in that is to say, um, part of me knows better. Part of me is still um, attracted to this thing that is in conflict with what knows better. And so there's a disconnection there, right? Because if if you are fully coherent um, in your knowledge that this substance or activity is toxic, then you wouldn't have to trust yourself. You would just know. It's like I'm absolutely certain there are certain things, certain that there are specific things that I don't want. Um, and it's crystal clear to me because I'm fully coherent in that. And then there's other things that I like, as I was talking about earlier with coffee. There's a part of me that says I think my life would be better without caffeine, and there's another part of me that says, uh, no, don't do that, you know. And I'm working on it. We'll see what happens. Um, but yeah, so it's that distance again. It goes back to the distance between your perception of yourself and what when you say trust the universe. And, of course, the universe is just another way of saying like God or consciousness or the higher self, all that. So um, instead of, and this is my suggestion, instead of saying I want to, or how do I arrive at trusting the universe because there would be great comfort in that, is to act in a way that aligns yourself with that will. So, because it offers I would say, an even deeper sense of peace. So, for example, um, and I think that this is another biblical reference, although again, I'm not a biblical scholar. I don't know where this comes up, but I'm pretty sure. Um, you might say like, why did this unfortunate thing happen to me? And that would be a trial of trust. Like I trusted you to protect me, and now something is happening to me that I don't want. The deeper understanding of being in alignment with the universe or God is thy will be done. And it's to say it's okay that I don't understand, but the best I can do is accept reality as it is and act accordingly. Um, Now that this is nuance. This might be a little remedial for most of you, but just to be really clear, accepting reality as it is doesn't mean that you condone it. It doesn't mean that you are helpless against it, and it also doesn't mean that you uh, don't have motivation to change it. What it means is that you are not in denial of the reality, so that you can see it clearly what the situation is. It's like if you have a broken bone and you don't want to look at it, or like a sprain, let's say it's a little bit less intense. You don't want to look at it and you try to walk on it, and then you further injure yourself, as opposed to assessing the situation very clearly, having a more comprehensive understanding of the situation, and then you can say, like, am I in a lot of danger? Do I have to risk walking on this sprain? Or can I just call somebody, have them come get me, and then, not risk further injury? So these are things that, like, you know, you want to, instead of, being comforted by the the womb of the universe, and that is true. I'm not denying that. I do understand it that way. Um, but I do also think that it's more beneficial to actively accept and align. And so then, of course, the reasonable question to ask is, well, how do you know if you're aligned, and what does that even mean? So the alignment is an internal guidance compass that I I really think that people generally have a sense of morality that is pretty good. You know, um, it's just that when emotions are involved, sometimes the emotions can be so loud that they will overwhelm the voice of that moral guidance. And so, that's one of the things that we see very, very strongly in modern media and politics, is that I think that people generally have a really good sense of what's right and what's not. And yet, um, the way that information comes to us, it just gets people so riled up that it prevents them from thinking clearly, and then they just start to make emotional decisions and perceptions, and it disturbs their sense of morality. It either dilutes or perverts it. So people will say and do things that are against what if they had a more calm attitude towards whatever that topic is, they would be able to see it more clearly. Now, it goes both sides, and I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying it in a very blanketed statement for pretty much everybody that, I mean, anybody that I've ever known. Um, as the emotions come up, it pulls power away and adds noise to any ability to create wise decisions. So um, now, along those lines, one of the ways that you can tell if you even have a chance of seeing something clearly, is how much tension do you have in your body when you're trying to make a choice. I think that, and especially in America, where we have so many health problems, people are very ignorant of the state of their bodies. And so it's not just a matter of like obesity, which is a problem, or heart disease, which is a problem, um, but just the stress. you can accumulate so much stress and tension, and that constriction um, is a sign that you're holding emotions. Stress is is a result of various emotions being bound in the body. So so if you notice that you're contracting, that's a really good way of identifying um, that the emotion is provoked, and then to logically conclude uh, that it would be very difficult to have clear decision on whatever the topic is. Now, my rule of thumb, because of course I'm susceptible to all the things that I'm talking about, is that if I'm tense or tired, I just defer completely, unless it's an emergency. But realistically, there's not the life doesn't have nearly the number of emergencies as people might make it seem. Um, unless there's a true emergency, then just defer. Let it sit. Let it. A lot of times these things work themselves out, um, but it's better to give it time and let it marinate a little bit, and let yourself assess the situation from a wiser, peaceful perspective than to feel like you have to rush to make a decision and then make an error in that sense. So yeah, uh, but one example of rushing, and again, not a major emergency, but very important, like earlier as soon as I saw the wood boring insects, uh, I felt like that was the most important thing to do. Got to get all that material out of there. If you could probably see in the background, we are building a house, and the last thing I want is wood boring insects next to a brand new house. That would be awful. Um, but as far as like all the rest of the mulching and the yard work, I'll get to it when I get to it. So got to be reasonable. Let's see. 23. Okay. Well, we're about out of time. Um, yeah, keep the questions, topics of interest coming. I love it. So, aloha.